Where are tomorrow's women leaders in STEM? Well, today I can tell you that we are here, but tomorrow we might not be. Society and workplaces create many barriers along women's pathway to leadership. And so if we want women leaders, which we should, we need to understand these barriers, and then we need to do something about them. We need to break them. These barriers are many and varied. They are interconnected and they compound each other. These barriers are intersectional, so they affect women of colour, women with disabilities, and women from lower socioeconomic backgrounds even more than we know. These barriers makes women leadership in STEM a complex problem. There isn't just one solution. So to tackle this complex problem, we have to understand these barriers and where they sit along our pathway to leadership. The gender inequity we see in STEM doesn't start at universities or in the workplace. It starts right back at home. We treat our sons and daughters incredibly differently, and this impacts their development, their career aspirations, and therefore their career destinations long after they are no longer a child. So if we think about it, we encourage our little boys to be superheroes. We reward them for being troublemakers, risk takers, and curious adventurers. We give them toys that they can build, create, and explore this world with. So essentially, we've given them the foundation to be successful in STEM. However, with our little girls, we encourage them to be princesses. We reward them for being nice, obedient, and caring. Important skills as a decent human being, but rarely rewarded in STEM. The toys that we give them are ones that they can look after and that they can care for, reinforcing the expectation that they will not be explorers in our society. They will be carers. From a young age, we put our children on two very different paths that is shaped by gender stereotypes. We distinguish between boys and girls with blue and pink, and we punish them if they want to break this gender binary we've created for them. So young kids form gender stereotypes at about the ages of 4 or 5. So they internalise it and they exhibit it back to us. So when we talk to them about STEM when they're 15, we are way too late. At the age of 15, young women have received so much messaging that STEM is not for them. And if they want to be in STEM, they have to be one of the boys, a fixer, care about the tech and not people, or they have to be dowdy. This is what we see in popular culture and in social media. So these young women also learn maths and physics through a highly masculinized curriculum. We use footballs and bullets to teach velocity and motion. And meanwhile, all of the scientists profiled in their textbooks are generally old white men. And as a 15-year-old woman, this might not be the most accessible role model. So in 2015, Microsoft did a study that found that young girls started to get interested in STEM at the age of 11. However, they lost interest at 15. This study also found that they lost interest in the humanities subjects at the same time, but that sharply rebounded. So that shows to us that this loss of interest in STEM is not natural. It's not biological. But it's why we only have 16% women studying engineering at universities in Australia. Gender stereotypes, a lack of visible female role models, and a lack of practical hands-on experience are why these young women said that they lost interest in STEM. So we can start to see that the gender inequity that we have in STEM is just a reflection of the gender inequity we have in society. But because we're clever but biased humans, we've designed that inequity into all of our systems. And this is clear in our university entrance requirements. So knowing that young women face significant and multiple barriers in their participation in STEM subjects in high schools, in Australia, we still require top-level maths and physics for you to study engineering or science at university. And the high potential women we do have in high school, they're told to study law or medicine, not science or engineering. So it's lucky that we have even 16% women studying engineering with us. But once you get to engineering at university, for example, this is what their pathway looks like. They are trying to connect the dots, but they don't know which one comes next. Women in fields such as engineering lack the vertical networks, the role models, the mentors, and the support that their male peers have to make their journey a bit easier. And let's say, okay, we're at university, we're studying engineering, and as a woman, they will find themselves the butt of sexist and misogynistic jokes by their peers. They will find themselves the only woman in the room or in their group project. And they will find themselves allocated the administrative tasks, the ones that compromise their ability to develop their technical expertise. And so they've gone through their university degree, they've survived, not thrived, just survived those 4 to 5 years of engineering. They're looking to transition into industry. We have 16% women studying engineering, we have 12% women working in engineering, and we have even fewer in leadership. Whilst most of our engineering firms now have a 50-50 gender target for their graduate recruitment intakes, and the most recent data shows that in their first year, women graduates in engineering earn more than their male peers, this is not a happy ending. They will find themselves walking a very precarious tightrope in the workplace, which is made up of unconscious gender bias. They will experience multiple barriers that include, but are not limited to, being perceived as competent or likable, but never both. Gendered expectations of their behaviour, such as emotional labour or administrative work for the team. Being perceived as bossy, aggressive and emotional, when really they're displaying leadership skills, assertiveness and passion. They are the representative for their gender, so they have zero room to fail. These women experience gendered performance evaluations that includes hedging, faint praise, and just plain negativity. And importantly, they are both perceived and evaluated negatively when they negotiate their salary. And this is so important because in Australia, women currently retire with 40% retirement savings of men. And women aged 55 and older are our fastest growing homeless population. So it's actually a miracle that when young women get into the workplace, dealing with all of the unconscious gender discrimination, that they have any time to do their actual job. I am at this stage in my career and I'm exhausted most of the time. Dealing with these gendered discrimination in the workplace is a part of my everyday. And now my peers and I are also facing the next stage of how to have a family and a career at the same time. We are the generation that were sold on having it all. Family, work, health, happiness, and importantly, financial independence. But as a young woman who knows how our workplaces are maybe not designed for women, it's actually pretty terrifying. And I want to be CEO one day, so I don't know how that's going to happen. It will, don't worry. Our workplaces are currently designed for men who have wives executing the caring responsibilities at home. This is why my male peers are not worried about maximising their career advancement before they go and have a family. It's a non-issue for them. So in Australia, we have a standard parental leave of 12 weeks for women and 2 weeks for men. So no prizes for guessing who's supposed to do the majority of the caring. So these caring arrangements within families suddenly become a financial negotiation. Who earns more, who gets more leave? It is not one based on family values or career aspirations. How we currently approach and characterise leadership is not based on the understanding of any caring responsibilities, let alone women with caring responsibilities. And women leaders are not evaluated on our talent. We are evaluated on how feminine or masculine we are and how much we do or don't subscribe to gender stereotypes, but we can never win. So understanding all of these barriers from childhood to leadership, we can start to change things. Like I said, this is a complex problem. There isn't just one solution, there are many. So what we need are some change makers that are ready to take on those solutions. We need change makers that will legislate against gender discrimination in clothes and toys. And individually, we each need to be change makers and disrupt the gender binary we have placed on our children and we have placed on ourselves. We need change makers that will incentivise good STEM teaching in primary school and high school for both teachers and STEM professionals. And we need change makers who will audit our curriculum to ensure that it is gender neutral. We need change makers who will only accept a critical mass of both men and women into STEM undergraduate degrees. And we need change makers who will transform entrance requirements, understanding the barriers women face to STEM participation in high school. We need change makers who will design group activities to ensure that women and other minoritised groups get a voice. We need change makers who will demand inclusive gender teaching practices and a 40-40-20 gender ratio in teaching staff. We need change makers that will legislate equal pay in companies and set gender equity targets for leadership, not in 30 years' time, but in 3 years' time. And then we need those change makers to help companies get there. And finally, we need change makers to create a parental leave system that is based on your family values and career aspirations, not a financial negotiation. So, we need change makers that would disrupt the bias and break the barriers that currently hold up the status quo of gender inequity in STEM. So tonight, after you've heard all of our inspiring speakers, I want you to go home and think about how you can be a change maker. What barriers in your world can you break so that when young women in STEM get to the workplace on their pathway to leadership, the only thing they have to do is their job? Thank you.